Hello everyone, my name is Caitlin and you're watching and listening to Business Queensland Connect, the podcast, the show designed to help small businesses start, grow and thrive. Today we are talking about wellness in business with special guest Martin McGlone. Martin is a business wellness coach and we'll discuss how including mental health as a part of your overall business planning and operations is optimal for both the owner and the business. Thanks for joining us. Welcome. Thanks for joining us, Martin.
Thank you very much for having me.
So can you give us a little bit of an overview of who you are, where you're from, your position?
Oh, gosh, yes. Well, my name's Martin McGlone. Where I'm from, that's an interesting one because I originally grew up in Hobart, Tasmania, but spent the last 30 years in Queensland, or more actually. And Position?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
What are you doing
I'm actually
now?
employed by the RSQ, Rural Solutions Queensland, which is an organisation which has employed me as a business wellness coach. And as a business wellness coach, I work very closely with other departments under this not-for-profit organisation I work for. And I have a really awesome opportunity to actually support people in business.
So Martin, how have you found yourself in a role as business wellness coach?
Well, actually, that's a long story. No, well, it's true because initially I did a business degree many years ago with my goal of running my own business. And in leading towards that, I'd worked in middle management in a few different businesses and I got some good experience. And I eventually got to the point where I thought, right, that's it. I'm going out on a limb and I'm going to start my own business. And I took out quite a significant loan against my property and put everything on the line, went out, started my business. First 3 months was nobody walked in the door, but I had a lot of work to do to set everything up and really was making sure that this was everything done properly. And we just started getting some really good turnover about 8 months in and the GFC hit. It stopped. We were very much a discretionary spend product. We were fine art, printing, reproduction and photos on canvas type things. And people just stopped coming in the door. And we went into a little bit of a mental health meltdown.
Yep.
Myself and my partner, that is.
Understandable.
It was really overwhelming and challenging. And over the coming weeks after that, we eventually found some support through a government department. I eventually also accessed some psychological support because I really wasn't coping because my life was on the line. Well, that's how I perceived it at the time.
Exactly.
So eventually, with all the supports in place, we got through that. And after 6 years of some actually really good successes, sold the business. And I thought, wow, that was such a ride. I'm having a year off. And my partner said, oh, you're going to have to do something with the year off. How about a little bit of study? That'd be fun. Yeah, 6 years later, I was still studying psychology full time. But it was funny because the one thing I had in my mind is I wanted to do something more meaningful. And so I didn't really know where that was leading, but it was in the very final stages of my Master's in Clinical Psychology that it fell apart a bit for me. There was a few events that meant that I couldn't actually complete the degree and get registered as a psychologist. So I was working with Queensland Health at the time, doing some support roles around mental health and wellbeing. And I really did enjoy that. But after a while there, I was starting to think, well, there's got to be the perfect thing that I can do. What is that? And I designed this perfect role where it would be pulling together everything in my history of all my knowledge and experience and supporting small business from a mental health perspective would be it. And then it was probably a few weeks later, I opened up the Seek and there was the job in perfect description of exactly what I had designed that I wanted to do.
Meant to be.
Absolutely was.
And it's so wonderful that you're able to couple your experience with your mental health studies as well. It means that you're fully equipped.
Absolutely, and it does feel that way. And although, as my role is I'm not a business coach, I'm a business wellness coach. However, I do find my experience in business does help a lot in identifying where those stresses are, what maybe
and
some
appreciating
simple
them.
tweaks. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because you've been there.
I know where they're at. Yes, absolutely.
So all in all, being able to provide that holistic approach. Your business is not just running the day-to-day customers in and out. It is holistic. Stick with your plan, stick with your mental health care, and look after yourself. Can you tell me, Martin, what does a business wellness coach actually do?
Well, that's actually a really broad answer to that question because what we actually do is really go into a business and help identify what the causes of the stressors or the challenges that they're experiencing, and see if we can help support them to either manage those stressors or overcome them in some way, or find a solution for them. And that often might take many different angles. So it might be referring them to other different organisations, or referring them for more direct support in specific areas, or it might be just working one-on-one with them over a period of time, helping them develop the strategies they need to be able to actually function well in their business.
Okay, wonderful. So how can a business access this coaching? How do they identify that they actually need it in the first place? And then how do they access it?
Well, identifying how you need it in the first place is really just looking for those signs that you're just not coping as well as you should be. Now, when I say not coping as well, a lot of people sort of get a bit stuck on that, thinking, well, I don't have a mental illness. I say, well, no, that's fair. You certainly don't need to have one. But if you find that you're just experiencing some real challenges, just even in your personal life, and in your business or separately, you might be just feeling irritable, nervous, angry, anxious, just not feeling settled really. You might just have trouble sleeping, or sleeping too much basically, experiencing weight or appetite changes, a lot of things that just indicate that there's something just not right. Then certainly you can reach out to us. And to be able to do that, there's actually lots of different ways. You Google Business Wellness Coaching Service and you'll come up with either the Rural Solutions website, where you can actually link directly to myself on that website, or to our Wellness Connection. So that's an email to wellness email support, or you can go to our main office, which is actually based in Roma, but that phone number, you can talk to somebody directly there. And then we just look at your eligibility criteria for the service, and then we connect.
Okay. And what does a session look like? Do you sit down, you have a chat? Do you do a bit of an analysis of the current business situation, the current personal situation? And how do you help those businesses implement the tools that you recommend?
Yes. Well, it's interesting because usually what I do firstly go in with is just to sit down and ask, what is it that's led to you this position where you've wanted to connect with me?
Yeah.
And that can be literally anything. And so really just to start with that really broad perspective to go, well, where are you coming from? What's going on for you? And then over time, we might really narrow that down to identify, and like I say, it's working with identifying what are the causes of these stresses. So they might come in just saying, look, I'm just really not coping. I'm not sleeping. My business is going down. Every month I'm losing money. It's just getting worse. I just really, really struggling and I'm not coping. And after a conversation over a period of time, we might identify that there might be one or two specific things that are actually going on, which we might be able to support with. Now, accessing supports can come in numerous different ways. So we can certainly refer to other organisations, like other government departments, like Mentoring for Growth, or a few others that are available. Or we can actually look at referring to private organisations. And we can help them identify what sort of services might be most appropriate for them, and we can support them in accessing those organisations. And if it's identified that it really is crucial, there may even be access to funding which can help support them in accessing those programs.
Yeah, and implementing what you've recommended.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the implementation is actually quite interesting because, like with anything, nothing goes to plan. So you might come up with this amazing plan and you go get those supports and this will happen and that'll happen. And then you find out as you're going along, well, there's other things at play, and then we'll work with them to really provide that overall support to help them pull it all together.
So what are some barriers to entry or barriers that some businesses are facing in coming to you? What's stopping them coming to you?
Probably the biggest one is that feeling of or that perception of it being a mental health problem. I really struggle with that, when people say, I have a mental health issue. Well, just because you're struggling, yes, that is because it's your mental health which is being challenged, but it doesn't mean you have a diagnosable mental health condition.
Nor is it a weakness.
Absolutely not.
If anything, it's showing strength, asking for that support.
Yes. And on the other side of that, many of my clients actually have got diagnosed mental health conditions, but cope extremely well in their lives. But when something goes wrong, that's when it triggers those mental health challenges.
Spirals out of control.
And it becomes really challenging. And we can certainly help support people from either direction. But but like you say, the barrier often is just that perception around mental health. Oh, there's something wrong with me if I'm having a mental health challenge, or if I'm too scared if I get identified as having a mental health disorder, or something around that whole mental health area. And there's been so much work lately about I suppose desensitizing people to this idea of mental health being something wrong. And it's interesting. I was just listening to the radio coming in this morning, and they were talking about the football teams and the challenges that they've been having around mental health, and really trying to break down those barriers is happening across the board.
Most definitely. And as I said, it's a sign of strength and a determination to actually ask for that help. And in turn, it can contribute to the success of the business, as opposed to it going the opposite direction. If you give yourself the coping tools and the mechanisms to put in place to handle that stress, your business is going to go to strength, as is you.
That's even an understatement. The amount of experience that I've had just in the last year since we started this program in people that I started working with a year ago that their businesses were failing, they were going through significant mental health challenges at that time. I've worked with them over time, we've accessed different supports, and with the addressing the mental health challenges, their businesses are actually, I was speaking to one yesterday, I actually closed them off yesterday. We said, you're done after all that work, because their business is thriving and they are thriving. So we know the support can really help.
Yeah, they go two and two, hey, together.
Absolutely.
Okay, so there's different stages in business. So we broadly talk about starting, maintaining, growing and exiting. So what type of issues can be seen at each particular stage from your experience?
Well, starting is always the real challenge. For a lot of people, it's often their first endeavour into the world of business, and it's one of those areas that you don't know what you don't know. So people go, well, I am an amazing cake decorator. I can do business successfully easily because everybody loves my product. And they start off and they start making cakes and people are buying them, and then a few months later they realise there's a few things that are just not working. But they don't know what's causing that to not work. And so there's some of these gaps start happening, and then they start getting a little stressed over the fact that, well, obviously there's stuff I don't know, but I don't know what I don't know. And that can be really, really stressful. And I've seen it so many times where that stress can get to the point of just being completely overwhelming. And people get to that stage of just wishing they'd never started the business, even though they've got customers who really want their product, and they've got people out there who absolutely love what they do, but they're just not feeling like they're actually able to cope with the situation that they're in.
Yeah, wonderful. And so in your look at a business stage of sort of growing or maintaining, you're probably in the business, you've got significant turnover, you've got great client base, but you're starting to feel overwhelmed again. What do you do? Do you come to you if you're coming back? So you've done the startup phase, you're doing the maintaining now. Do you come to you, or do you sit down and reevaluate, perhaps look at your business plan and look at it a holistic approach if you're starting to feel overwhelmed?
Well, I think getting support straight as soon as you can is really the key, because when you're in your business and you've been working in your business and you are, to say the usual, it's like, you can't see the forest for the trees because you are so involved in your business and so caught up in all the detail. It's really hard to get that overall perspective. So having somebody else just come in and just have a general look over where you're at and what's going on for you can just in itself make a significant difference. Just to have somebody say, well, actually what you're doing there is amazing. Just a few minor tweaks could really significantly change what you're doing, I'll re-say that. A few minor tweaks might really be able to actually provide some opportunities to actually make some significant changes. And it can make such a big difference to how people engage with the business.
Yes. And if they sort of sit back with you and you encourage them to look at the bigger picture, and you could perhaps sit down with them and identify areas that they could improve upon or identify opportunities. And sometimes it does take someone with a little bit of outside perspective to actually go, hey, you could probably do this a little bit better, or you're doing a fabulous job, keep it up. And sometimes that just helps as well, doesn't it?
And it does. And one of the things that I find is often the goal, which I find I'm going into businesses and we develop a goal, and often that goal is just to really improve how people are engaging with their business. And the way I usually describe that is, let's try and see if we can get the business working more for you rather than you working for it. So really just putting in some of those, I suppose, a lot of it is just perception about how you're looking at what it is you're doing and how you can identify that your negative thinking about some of your challenges in the business is significantly overblown and causing you some real problems. And how even just a few minor tweaks might just help change how you're engaging with your business to see that, well, actually, that's not such a big problem. And if I just keep going in a certain direction, things work out well.
Could you give us a bit of an example of what sort of tweaks that you've done in the past to help people get out of that fog and get out of that panic? Even, just the smallest little changes that makes a big difference in a business?
Yeah, I suppose some of the examples might be, I'm going to think about this for a moment.
Please.
Because there are so many. I've had hundreds of clients to date, about 60 current. Let me think. Who were I talking to with yesterday? Oh, okay, yes. I have a client who runs their own small, let me see, what would I call it? Allied health business. And they found that they were getting extremely overwhelmed and constantly feeling challenged about how their workflow was happening. They were constantly running over with their clients. They were constantly having to stay back late at night to get their work done. They were having just so many issues and they were just getting so stressed. And I came along and just firstly, again, probably did the most important and helped them really just sit back and have a look at what it is they're actually doing. And then we just started making some tweaks about how they can actually plan and develop strategies to approach each day. And we looked at, well, how do you work? How do you work best? And we identified that some of their best work was done in the mornings. They were very much a morning person. So I said, rightio. So in the mornings, how can we develop a strategy that you can engage with the most important aspects of your business at that time so that once you start working with your clients, you're not worrying about anything else. And your client work can be completely separate from the business. And I think that in itself made a big difference. But then again, probably what made the biggest difference after that was really working with the client to identify the fact that they felt like that they were the business and everything that they did was completely part of the business. Now, I recognise that, yes, when we're a small business operator and often we are the only person in the business, yes, we are the business. But we have to find a way to separate our personal selves, our sense of self, from the business. The business operator, the business owner is not actually the business. So in other words, the business is doing well. Yes, you can be doing well. The business does poorly doesn't mean you need to be doing poorly too. You are not the business. You can still be doing well. And to identify strategies to be able to actually help people make that separation between self and business is just so valuable and so has such a significant impact. And I've seen that so many times over, where, maybe a few months after we've had some really strong conversations around that separation of sense of self and the business, a few months later they've come back and just said, that's just made such a big difference. The ups and downs of the day-to-day ups and downs of the business don't mean that I'm having those constant ups and downs as well.
Yeah. Okay. That's a really good point. So you're not the business. You can be doing well and the business can be doing well, but they're not together.
Exactly. yeah.
Okay. So let's have a little chat about the relationship between an owner's mental health let's have a chat about the relationship between the owner's mental health and strong business performance. So I'm sure that there's a strong correlation between the two.
Absolutely. Now, I'll talk about two separate scenarios here.
Please.
Because probably more often than not, then yes, if somebody's mental health is starting to be challenged, and it might even be caused from something that's happened at home. It might be caused from, some family issues, or it might be something else. But when people are really suffering with their mental health, let me call it wellbeing. When people are really suffering with their wellbeing, that really makes it very difficult to make those right decisions in your business. I often go into talking about basic neurology. How do we work? And if we're feeling really overwhelmed, basically, bottom line, that means we've got stress hormones running through our body. We've got the adrenaline, the cortisol, and we all know that adrenaline makes us, that really itchy, want to fight sort of thing. But we don't think much about what the cortisol does.
Okay.
And cortisol, its job basically in the stress response is to basically shut down activity. So we know what it feels like when we suddenly have a major stress, we feel like we need to go to the toilet because the cortisol's shut down our digestive system.
Okay, yeah.
But most people aren't aware of the fact that it does the same in the brain. It actually shuts down unnecessary activity. And one of the most, I suppose, significant areas that it actually reduces activity in is the prefrontal cortex, which of course is our higher level decision-making part of our brain. So we're feeling completely overwhelmed, we're really stressed out.
And we
we've got all
can't
this
make
cortisol,
a decision.
And we can't make a decision. Yeah, that's usually the time when we're trying to make the decisions because we feel we need to fix things, we need to make a change. We know something has to change. We know we have to do something different because it's not working as it's going at the moment. Yeah.
So how do we make a decision in that? You know, businesses can't shut the door and say, I can't talk to you right now, can't make that decision. What do you do to get yourself out of that?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I usually ask people, so what do you do to manage your stress? And it's amazing how often I just get a really funny, quirky look on the face going, what do you mean? And honestly, some people come back with a whole range of different answers. But quite often people feel like that they need to rely on something to manage their stress, where I talk a lot more about a holistic perspective. To manage our stress means doing a whole range of things that we can do to reduce that stress response. In other words, reducing those stress hormones so that our brains and bodies can actually function properly. And that usually can take, really simple things just like, a little bit of physical exercise, good sleep hygiene, good eating, a few things like that. But then we can start getting into more, I suppose, what I call cognitive exercises, things that can really help us think about things that reduce our stress. Now, if we think about something that's a good thing in our life, something that's positive, we feel good because we've had hormones released in our brain which make us feel good. If we think about something that's makes us feel angry, of course, we do literally feel angry because we've had those hormones that make us feel angry. And same with stress and same with things. So we find that what we're doing is the thoughts that we have significantly influence how we feel, and how we feel significantly influences how we behave. And so if we can identify some of those more significant negative thoughts are really making us feel bad and actually, again, really triggering that release of those stress hormones, reducing our ability to function and behave in a positive way, if we can identify those thoughts and help people actually recognise that negative thinking is making it so much more difficult to actually move forward in the business. And so if we can sort of even just make a minor shift in that, to just think, well, every time you think about that, the business, where every day I'm losing another, $1,000, or everybody that comes in the door expects something that I can't give, or whatever it is that's causing you that problem, if you can shuffle that around to say, well, actually, I made enough money over the last 6 months to cover the current losses, and I know it's going to turn around and all will be good, that actually significantly changes the balance of hormones in our brain, and we can actually function better.
So a part of your everyday business activity should be positive self-talk and reinforcement of how far you've come and how well you've done, and to appreciate that business does go in ebbs and flows. And then if you're in a down, we more often than not come back up, would you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely do.
So closing your business, which is not a fun topic, but closing your business can be a really difficult decision, and sometimes we probably don't give this enough focus. How would you feel sharing a bit of light on what people can do from a mental well-being perspective when they're going through that journey? Yeah.
Well, I suppose firstly to start off with the fact that recognising that closing the business usually means that things have gone really bad. And so we're probably not in a good space. It's very unlikely that we're cruising along with this amazingly successful business and suddenly decide we want to close and it's all good. It does happen, but very rare. Usually things have gone really bad. And so again, to recognise that you're going to be very much challenged by the processes that you're going through. So instead of just sort of going, well, I've got to close the business because I've got to get rid of it so I can feel better because I'm just suffering from the challenges I'm experiencing in the business, recognising that, well, closing the business is going to be even worse than what you've probably been experiencing running the business.
That's a good point.
And so recognising that is part of the process of recognising that you may just actually need help. Now, accessing help, of course, accessing the website or making a phone call or an email to the wellness team to have somebody come along and help work with you through the process of what it means to you to close this business. And then how can you engage with that process in a way that doesn't actually leave permanent scars on your, the way you...
Your well-being. Yes,
yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, eligibility. Who's eligible? Who can come see you?
Yes. It's actually really broad, which is awesome. But basically, the bottom line is you need an ABN which is registered in Queensland. So we do run in Queensland. So the ABN registered in Queensland and the business being headquartered in Queensland. And then we have a maximum limit of up to 20 full-time equivalent employees. So you might have 40 part-timers or even 60 quarter-timers or whatever it is, but 20 full-time equivalent employees and turning over no more than 10 million a year.
Okay.
And that's probably easy
Quite
for
broad.
most businesses. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Alrighty. Finally, any words of inspiration for those out there who are wanting to start or grow their business?
Well, certainly if you're wanting to start your business, jump in and do it, but find out what it is you need. And that's the biggest thing. Like I mentioned before, you don't know what you don't know. So talk to somebody who does. And it might not necessarily be myself. It might be just getting a business coach. It might be accessing some of the other government supports like Mentoring for Growth or other departments. There's so many different directions you can go. But the most important thing is you do go and talk to people who do know what you need to do.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what you don't know.
No. So get all the tools in place, do a skills analysis, work out what you can do well, what you can't do well, and how you're going to fill those gaps, hey?
Absolutely.
Okay, and what about those who are wanting to grow their business?
Well, there's so many different aspects to that. And I think that the most important thing is, again, to really get support behind you to find out what the weaknesses are in your business. So admittedly, there are some out there who have all the experience in the world and can jump in and really grow their business, and I have some of them as my clients, but they forgot to consider themselves in that process. So in other words, the business is running at 110%, but they're running at 20.
Yeah.
And I see that, unfortunately, so many times over that, and again, probably one of the challenges that I often find is people that go, yep, I'll spend money on a really good business coach and I'll get them on board and we'll really fire this business up. And the business coach, of course, is doing an amazing job helping them actually put in all the processes and strategies to ensure that that business grows absolutely its best with, unfortunately, often no consideration for the well-being of the business owner.
Yeah.
And that often can suffer so much in that stage of the growth of the business.
Yes. So make sure with all the planning, you're contributing. Make sure with all of the planning that you allocate time daily, not only to work on the business but also on your mental health as well.
Yeah, and it's considering your mental health in the systems and processes and structures that you're actually developing for your business. So every time you think, right, we've got this amazing idea, we can do this and we can do that, then ask yourself, how am I going to fit in with that? How is that going to look after me? The business has to work for you. You don't have to only be working for the business. Yeah. It has to work for you.
So that mental health and well-being has to be incorporated in your overall strategy, really, because if you're running at your optimum level, so will your business.
Absolutely, and it makes such a big difference. I've dealt with people who have $5 million turnover businesses that have grown from 1 million 2 years ago. They have amazing, fantastic growth, and they've come to me just completely overwhelmed, just going, I cannot cope, I cannot do this. And often it's just a simple conversation that identifies clearly that just completely omitted any consideration for how they fit into that process.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you for coming along today, Martin.
You're more than welcome.
If you enjoyed the episode, please make sure that you like and subscribe. It makes a big difference and you'll stay updated with more fantastic content focused on helping small businesses start, grow and thrive. You can find more information on what we've talked about today and subscribe to our monthly newsletter on the Business Queensland website. Thank you.